So the first step is going to be kind of a specific step for my students, but we're going to travel to our data here at our event data and click on the link. For Tableau, there's a couple ways that you can connect data. You can connect it through a CSV file, through an Excel file. You can even do a Google Sheet, but with the student devices and some of those, if they're working on Chromebooks, it can kind of slow things down. So we are going to download this. So we'll go to File, Download. We could download this as an Excel file, but for my students, I want you to get in the habit of downloading in a CSV file. One thing you have to be careful is if you do have multiple tabs, a CSV file is only going to download one. And the reason we want a CSV file is as we start working with Python and some of that, it will make it a lot easier. So I've downloaded my file. See it in my downloads. Next, I'm going to go to Tableau Public. And one thing I always do is when you search, make sure you search Tableau Public. There's a lot of different Tableaus out there. And you want the Tableau Public. If you don't see the public part, then you may not be in the right place. Once you see the Tableau Public, we are going to sign in. If you don't have an account, please sign up. Quickly signing in. And we are going to create a visualization from scratch. So once I sign in, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Create. I'm going to go to Web Offering. And this is going to open the web version of Tableau. There's also a desktop version, there's a cloud version, but the web version will work for everything we need. Next thing we'll ask for is to drag and drop files or upload from your computer. You can also see the different connectors, so you can see how you can connect the Google Drive and things like that, but for our case, we are just going to upload. So you can click upload from the computer. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop from my recent downloads. And then it'll load up. Okay. There is one step we need to do before we move on to the next one. As you can kind of see in here, and if we update the table, we see these F1, F2, F3, and not our column names. So we would like our column names to be at the top, right? Our headers that says that these are the events, what questions these are, and things like that in our survey. So what we need to do is click on this little arrow and go field names are in the first row. And that will change it. It will update our field names. So now our headers are at the top there and we can see them. We can see our data. We feel pretty good. One thing we could do is we could add multiple data files and add unions and things like that. But really, if it's all in one data file, we are now good to go to the next step. The next step is just go to Sheet 1. And sheets are how you create visualizations. So that's the most important part. And to start with, I would just play with creating sheets and visualizations. And depending on your computer, you may take a little bit to kind of process this, depending on how much data and things like that. So depending on your data, you're going to see the different tables and the fields and things like that. And what we need to do, especially for our data, is kind of figure out how to play with it. And so what I want to do, this is survey data over events, and I want to analyze each event by itself, right? I could look at the overall data, but what if I could look at event 1, 2, 3, 4, through the 32 events we have here, right? So I put it in the columns. I could put it in the rows and it would, break it down like that. That's fine. Doesn't really matter. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for what I want to actually look at. So we have some survey questions. And maybe I want to do, I feel prepared for the future. And the first thing I'm going to try is I'm going to put that in the rows. And this is where you need to be familiar with your data. If you're not familiar with your data, it's going to be very hard to do this part. You can do just kind of playing around until you kind of figure it out. That is one way, but the best way is just to go in your data and kind of figure out what's going on. Because here, the I feel prepared, what that has done is it has given me all of the different answers that are possible. Students can answer I agree, disagree, neutral, strongly agree, or strongly disagree. And probably what we want is a count. How many said they agreed? How many said that they didn't agree? How can I do that? Well, let's go back to I feel prepared for the future. Let's try dragging that to the text and see what happens. The text will decide what is inside the table itself. The nice part about this, we see some stuff, but this doesn't it makes sense, but it's not useful, right? Event one says neutral and neutral, not very helpful. So what we need to do is we actually need to change this to something that's a measure, right? A number. And you can kind of think measure means number. And let's just do count. Let's count how many responses are for each one. That actually gives us a table. Now we can start looking and we see, oh yeah, people somewhat felt respected, but overall we're not getting a lot of responses from that question, right? In fact, we looked at some of the other questions, we get a lot more responses compared to this, but this is still somewhat useful. What are my next steps? So this is a table. Tables, can be useful, but also much more useful to graphs. So the last thing I want to show you is how do we make graphs. So once you get some stuff on here, you can go to show me and start creating graphs. And one thing you can kind of see is like, if I want to create a graph that has lines, then I need a date. And I need at least a measure, and I could have dimensions. So it kind of tells you what you need for each one. And once you get some stuff there, you can just start creating some graphs. The first graph I make is a bar graph. And one thing it does is it does it by the answers first. So it groups it by all the people that said they agreed. This could be somewhat useful if we could kind of compare how many agreed versus how many disagreed and things like that. But really what I wanted to see is by event. So how do I change that? Well, it's pretty easy. The reason this shows that way is because these are rows. And inside our rows, we have I feel prepared before the event. So if I just switch that around, now we have it broken down by event. And we see, oh yeah, people felt pretty neutral about that. Some people didn't feel like, they felt like they didn't, strongly disagreed that they felt prepared for the future and things like that. So some interesting data in there. But the other thing I can do is find out what some of these other graphs look like, because this is good, but I would consider this potentially better. And one thing to even make this a little bit better, so I kind of like this, but it's hard to read the events and things like that. If I go up here, there's a couple things I can do. One, I can sort. So I can ascend and things like that, but I can also just swap the rows and columns, which makes it really easy to do something like this. And then yes, I can sort. So let's try to sort. And so what we see here is we have a graph, and this would be my analysis, what I would write down. I have a graph, and it looks like event 10 had the most responses. Let's click this so we can see this. So we see how many people agreed. Quite a few people agreed. Number disagreed. Most were neutral. Strongly agreed and strongly disagreed. Okay. And one thing you could do is we could actually move this around. So I could do this. Agree, disagree. We'll put neutral in the middle. So now it's in order. It is from agree, strongly agree to neutral to disagree to strongly agree. And we see, this event for sure was very kind of divisive, right? A lot of people felt like they didn't agree or they did agree, but a lot of people felt in the middle and things like that. So that'd be kind of my analysis. My final thing to this would be, if I were to clear this up, is like I can exclude something. So null value means that there was just no entries. Okay, not very helpful for us. So I can exclude anything that doesn't have entries. I can also format the legend. Oh no. I want to change the colors. Assign colors to palette highlights. Edit colors. So I can edit the colors. So strongly agree, I like that as green. I think I want to make this is there no Let's select our color palette. I want to go from like green to red. Where's green to red? Okay, I'm getting us off track. Strongly agree. Let's do green and green. Let's do lighter green. Okay, strongly agree. We'll do this. Click on this neutral. I'm gonna do like a yellow. Disagree. We're gonna do, maybe we'll do orange, and then this will do red. Okay. And then I would put my thing here. I'd assign a title. Students felt prepared for the future. Okay. And then I would call this a finished visualization. This looks good. It looks clean. And even if what I'm expecting you to start with is maybe not even this, you may not get to the part where you change the colors and things like that, but eventually you will. So that kind of gets you started. You can create, more sheets. You can create more visualizations. You can do things, just play around with dragging and dropping and seeing what you can kind of create. You never know what you can do. The key, though, is you need to make sure you have measures. So all these are dimensions. So if I want to measure something, make sure that you change it. So something like count. And then we can do something like that. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Follow along. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you.